Science is the great antidote to the poison of enthusiasm and superstition. A nation is not made wealthy by the childish accumulation of shiny metals, but it enriched by the economic prosperity of its people. Hatred and anger are the greatest poison to the happiness of a good mind. The first duty of the sovereign is that of protecting the society from the violence and invasion of other independent societies, which can be performed only by means of a military force. The great source of both the misery and disorders of human life seems to arise from overrating the difference between one permanent situation and another. The first thing you have to know is yourself. A man who knows himself can step outside himself and watch his own reactions like an observer. Man naturally desires not only to be loved, but to be lovely. The great secret of education is to direct vanity to proper objects. It is not for its own sake that men desire money, but for the sake of what they can purchase with it. Never complain of that of which it is at all times in your power to rid yourself. Mercy to the guilty is cruelty to the innocent. There is no art which one government sooner learns of another than that of draining money from the pockets of the people. We are but one of the multitude, in no respect better than any other in it. The division of labor, however, so far as it can be introduced, occasions, in every art, a proportionable increase of the productive powers of labor. Every man, as long as he does not violate the laws of justice, is left perfectly free to pursue his own interest his own way, and to bring both his industry and capital into competition with those of any other man, or order of men. No society can surely be flourishing and happy of which by far the greater part of the numbers are poor and miserable. Consumption is the sole end and purpose of all production. There is a great deal of ruin in a nation. As soon as the land of any country has all become private property, the landlords, like all other men, love to reap where they never sowed, and demand a rent, even for its natural produce. To feel much for others and little for ourselves, to restrain our selfishness and exercise our benevolent affections, constitute the perfection of human nature. It is not very unreasonable that the rich should contribute to the public expense, not only in proportion to their revenue, but something more than in that proportion. To superficial minds, the vices of the great seem at all times agreeable. It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker, that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own self-interest. The desire of being believed, the desire of persuading, of leading, and directing other people, seems to be one of the strongest of all our natural desires. People of the same trade seldom meet together, even for merriment and diversion. But the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public, or in some contrivance to raise prices. The poor man's son, whom heaven has in its anger visited with ambition, goes beyond admiration of palaces to envy He labors all his life to outdo his competitors, only to find the end that the rich are no happier than the poor in the things that really matter. In the common degree of the moral, there is no virtue. Virtue is excellence. What is the work of one man, in a rude state of society, being generally that of several in an improved one? Every man lives by exchanging. The subjects of every state ought to contribute towards the support of the government, as nearly as possible, in proportion to their respective abilities. Virtue is excellence, something uncommonly great and beautiful, which rises far above what is vulgar and ordinary. The learned ignore the evidence of their senses to preserve the coherence of the ideas of their imagination. The furious behavior of an angry man is more likely to exasperate us against himself than against his enemies. The great affair, we always find, is to get money. In ease of body and peace of mind, all the different ranks of life are nearly upon the same level, and the beggar who suns himself by the highway possesses that security which kings are fighting for. Individual ambition serves the common good. The most sacred laws of justice are the laws which guard the life and person of our neighbor. How selfish soever man may be supposed, there are evidently some principles in his nature which interest him in the fortune of others, and render their happiness necessary to him, though he derives nothing from it except the pleasure of seeing it. Virtue is more to be feared than vice, because its excesses are not subject to the regulation of conscience. Wherever there is great property, there is great inequality. All for ourselves, and nothing for other people, seems, in every age of the world, to have been the vile maxim of the masters of mankind. A man must always live by his work, and his wages must at least be sufficient to maintain him. They must even upon most occasions be somewhat more, otherwise it would be impossible for him to bring up a family, and the race of such workmen could not last beyond the first generation. The wages of labor are the encouragement of industry, which, like every other human quality, improves in proportion to the encouragement it receives. Never trust a person that has let you down more than 2 times. Once was a warning, twice was a lesson, and anything more than that is simply taking advantage. Problems worthy of attacks prove their worth by hitting back. Society may subsist, though not in the most comfortable state, without beneficence, but the prevalence of injustice must utterly destroy it. It was not by gold or by silver, but by labor, that all the wealth of the world was originally purchased. Civil government, so far as it is instituted for the security of property, is in reality instituted for the defense of the rich against the poor, or of those who have some property against those who have none at all.